There's a structural risk hidden in most AI governance implementations. It looks like oversight. It functions as liability transfer. Your inbox pings 156 regulatory change alerts from the new EU AI Act guidance. Your dashboard shows 89 board-level risk flags to triage. The quarterly report goes live in 48 hours. Even at 2 minutes per item, that's over 8 hours of uninterrupted focus. You don't have 8 hours. You have a 3 p.m. meeting, 2 urgent emails from legal, and a headache. So what do? You skim, you click, approve, approve, approve. 3 months later, one of those flagged risks materializes. A supplier's emissions data was based on estimates, not measurements. The auditors pull the trail. Reviewed by your name, timestamp. You just absorbed the liability for a system you couldn't possibly verify. Not the multi-million-dollar algorithm, not the vendor, not the executive who signed the contract. You. In governance terms, that's a weak control environment, a structural gap where accountability is assigned without the resources to exercise it. It looks like a person failed. In reality, the control framework was never designed for them to succeed. Researchers have a name for this pattern. Madeleine Clare Elish calls it the moral crumple zone. I call it the liability sponge. Same phenomenon, different image. And it has a much older cousin in storytelling that makes the trap unmistakable. But before we name it, the trap has an exit. One organization chased a 2-cent accounting variance because their system wouldn't let it pass. That investigation uncovered data errors that saved them 12% on Scope 3 emissions. Another team turned an 847-item review backlog into a 47-item strategic review, not by cutting corners, but by building systems where AI surfaces uncertainty and humans focus judgment where it matters. The weak control environment is a liability. The accountable governance framework is an asset. Keep that in mind. The horror is real, but so is the solution. So what does this weak control environment actually look like when you strip away the spreadsheets? In the original Star Trek, there was a pattern so consistent it became a dark joke among fans. The away team beams down to an alien planet. Captain Kirk, Dr. McCoy, Mr. Spock, and one unnamed ensign in a red uniform. The monster attacks. Kirk dives behind a rock. Spock calculates escape vectors. The red shirt? Vaporized. Episode after episode. The red shirt dies so the heroes can live. Here's what makes it tragic. The red shirt doesn't know he's the red shirt. He thinks he's on the mission. He thinks he's part of the team. He beams down with the same transporter, wears the same Starfleet insignia, but he has no name, no backstory, no shield. His function in the narrative is to absorb the danger so the characters who matter can survive. This is exactly how a weak control environment operates. When an organization deploys a system it can't fully audit or explain, it needs someone to stand between the system and the consequences. Someone to demonstrate that humans are involved, without actually giving those humans the power to change anything. The red shirt provides plausible deniability. We had someone there. They approved it. The captain goes home with a commendation. The red shirt's family gets a folded flag. Now let's put the formal framework around this. Think about how a car is designed. The front of the vehicle is engineered to crumple, to absorb the impact of a collision so the passengers survive. The crumple zone is sacrificial by design. Elish noticed the same pattern in how organizations deploy AI systems. The human operator is the crumple zone. The company buys an AI system they don't fully understand. They can't audit the model weights. They can't explain the edge cases. They know it will fail sometimes. All systems do. So they position a human in front of it. Not to actually control the system. The math moves too fast, the volume is too high, but to absorb the impact when it crashes. When the system makes a biased decision, when it hallucinates a citation, when it rejects the wrong supplier, the audit trail shows a human approved it. Human error, the company says. We had oversight. See the logs. In corporate risk language, this is disproportionate liability allocation, responsibility assigned without commensurate resources, authority, or agency. In plain language, accountability without the ability to actually account. The sponge soaked up the mess. The shield absorbed the blast. The red shirt took the hit. 3 metaphors. 1. Structural failure. All of them designed to protect the system from you. not the other way around. How does this happen? Rarely malice, usually lazy design. The formal term is an accountability dump, responsibility without resources, authority without agency. A perfect place to see this is in ESG reporting, how companies prove they're being good corporate citizens. On the surface, AI seems ideal. It can process mountains of supplier data and create transparency. The whole idea is to do good. But here's the catch. Most of these AI systems lack explainability. Even the engineers who built them can't always explain the logic behind a specific decision. And if nobody can explain it, nobody can take meaningful accountability for it. For example, an AI might flag any missing data from a supplier as a risk indicator. But what if that supplier is a small business in a developing country that simply doesn't have the resources to provide that specific data point? The AI doesn't know context. It doesn't know poverty. It doesn't know that a family farm run on WhatsApp invoices might be more ethical than a corporate supplier with a glossy PDF. It just knows 0 versus 1, present versus absent, signal versus silence. If you automate that rejection, you are automating harm. But if you put a human there to rubber stamp the rejection, you are automating cowardice. You are giving the algorithm a moral alibi. That is the sponge function, to provide the illusion of humanity without the reality of judgment. The person in that role often wants to do better. They see the unfairness, they feel the wrongness, but they don't have the time, the tools, or the standing to stop it. They're the red shirt who knows the mission is doomed, but beams down anyway because that's the job. So if that's the problem, how do we fix it? The solution requires a fundamental shift. We have to move from governance theatre to forensic evidence, from data lineage and provenance, not vendor promises. Governance theatre is, we have a policy, we have a human in the loop, we care about ethics. It looks good on the org chart, it checks the compliance boxes, but it stops nothing in the real world. Evidence is, we tested the model's bias. We verified the data lineage. We documented the limits. It looks boring in a presentation, but it saves your life in a deposition. Here's the Star Trek way to see it. Theatre is wearing the uniform. Evidence is carrying the tricorder. The red shirt had the uniform. What he didn't have was the tool, the device that scans the environment, detects the threat, and gives you information before the monster attacks. Spock survives because he has data. He can say, "Captain, the creature is silicon-based. Our phasers are ineffective. I recommend retreat." The red shirt doesn't have that scan. He just has orders. Go check it out. The difference between costume and armor is information. You've seen this split in the real world. Compass, the American criminal sentencing algorithm, is the costume, a black box the community cannot stop. The alternative is a system where the community can halt the process with 25% of signatures. Costume versus armor. It's no longer enough to have an AI ethics policy hanging on the wall. You need real evidence that your systems are fair, auditable, and that the humans working alongside them genuinely understand what they're signing off on. The armor I'm describing is what, in boardroom terms, we call an accountable governance framework, what I call a sociable system. The whole idea is to create technology where accountability isn't an afterthought. It's baked in from the beginning by design. This goes beyond human in the loop, which is a buzzword. This is about creating clear, explicit, and tested boundaries, a distributed accountability structure with bilateral disclosure, where humans and AI each contribute what they do best, with honest acknowledgement of limitations on both sides. In an accountable governance framework, 1. AI systems surface uncertainty. They don't just guess, they admit doubt. I'm 94% confident on this supplier, but only 61% confident on that one. Here's why. 2. Humans have genuine authority in time. You aren't drowning in a queue you can't possibly clear. You're directing the AI to surface the cases that genuinely need your judgment, and trusting it on the rest because you've tested that trust. 3. Responsibility is mapped before anything goes wrong. We know exactly what the machine is responsible for: computation, pattern matching, speed, and what the human is responsible for: context, judgment, ethics. When you build a system this way, the weak control environment simply can't form. There's nothing for the sponge to absorb. Here's the Star Trek version. In this kind of system, you're not the red shirt. You're not even just the science officer with a tricorder. You're the bridge crew, the captain and Spock and the computer working together, each bringing something the others lack. The computer processes sensor data faster than any human could. Spock provides logical analysis. Kirk brings intuition and moral weight. None of them alone could navigate the mission. Together, they survive what would destroy any of them individually. Clarity kills the sponge. Collaboration creates the shield. Practical tools. This all sounds great in theory. How do you actually make it happen? The Red Alert Protocol. You create clear, non-negotiable agreements about when and how humans can intervene. Not to dominate the process, but to ensure that when something doesn't feel right, there's always a path to pause and investigate. If a vendor cannot explain how their AI makes decisions, you don't sign. If the model starts drifting, you freeze the workflow. If the volume of work exceeds your ability to verify, you pause the queue. Here's a real-world trigger. You're about to sign a contract for a new AI tool. You ask the vendor a simple question. Tell me all the ways this system is known to fail. If they refuse to answer or get evasive, the contract is put on hold. Not a suggestion. A non-negotiable trigger. But here's the reframe. In the old model, stop the line is an emergency brake. You pull it when everything's broken, and you wait helplessly for the experts to arrive. In an accountable governance framework, stop the line is a conversation. You pause, not because you're helpless, but because you need to think together with the system about what's happening. Show me which suppliers triggered this alert. What changed in the underlying data? Can we adjust the threshold for this specific category? That's not calling in the cavalry. That's collaboration at the point of contact. If you cannot stop the machine, you are not a pilot. You are a passenger. And passengers die in crashes they can't prevent. Tool number 2, the verification control, the phaser test. This is about understanding your system's blind spots before they cause damage. We'll cover this in depth in Module 5, but here's the principle. Submit a supplier profile that's absolutely perfect in every way, except you intentionally leave one minor, non-critical field blank, like an optional contact number or a company's LinkedIn URL. Feed it back in. If the score tanks, your model is brittle. You've just caught a bias before it became a lawsuit. You've proven you're not a sponge, you're a tester. In Star Trek terms, you just ran a diagnostic on the shields before the Klingons showed up. That's what separates the crew that survives from the crew that doesn't. The big picture. Let's zoom out. At the end of the day, this isn't just about making corporate audits better or helping companies avoid lawsuits. This is about defining our operating relationship with these incredibly powerful technologies. There's a reason the red shirt became such an enduring image. It's not just a TV trope. It's a recognition of something we all sense in our working lives. Some roles are designed for sacrifice. The red shirt doesn't choose to die. He doesn't fail at his mission. He succeeds at his mission, which is to absorb the danger so someone else doesn't have to. The tragedy isn't that he dies. The tragedy is that he doesn't know that's his function. The moment you recognize the pattern, you can refuse to play the part. The difference between the sponge and the strategist isn't skill. It isn't even authority. It's awareness. The sponge accepts the workflow given to them. The strategist interrogates the workflow and rebuilds it. The sponge beams down with orders. The strategist beams down with questions. What are the threats? What tools do I have? What's my exit plan? Is your AI genuinely improving outcomes, or is it just obscuring decision-making? Is it using all of its complexity to hide decisions that are actually biased, unfair, or just plain wrong? The way we answer that question is going to define the entire future of accountable technology. It is time to change your uniform color. Not by quitting your job or refusing to work with AI, but by demanding the tools, the time, and the standing to actually do the job you've been assigned. If you want to learn how to build the armor, the override protocols, the verification controls, the evidence, check out the full AI-ESG integrated strategist curriculum at Kayali. Watch Bait. If you go back and watch the original Star Trek, pay attention to the transporter room scene before any away mission. The captain takes a phaser, The doctor takes a tricorder. The red shirt takes nothing. He is sent into a hostile environment with no tools, no protection, no information. That's not a character. That's a sacrifice. Don't beam down without knowing which one you are. Don't beam down without the tricorder.